Hi, everyone. I wanted to record a short webinar for you guys just to kind of rehash some of the things that I shared with you in our last session in March about some of the resources available from Teaching with Primary Sources, MTSU, and then also point out a few features that may be useful for us from the Library of Congress website. So my hope is in this session, just again, show you some of the resources available for 8th grade teachers, especially in that unit that we're focusing on for this summer's workshop, kind of that Constitution, New Nation unit, and give you hopefully a chance to think about some of these resources. And so that as we get to the next step after the workshop, you have a familiarity with what's available, some of the primary sources that have been featured in some of our MTSU materials, and just give you a chance to kind of use that as a jumping off point. So to begin with, we're going to focus with our TPS-MTSU website and some of the resources that we have available. And again, some of this right here will be just a review of what we talked about at the end of our session in March, but I wanted to give us a way to do that in something that you can go back and review again on your own time. So to find our website, of course, you can just Google Teaching with Primary Sources MTSU, or you can go to this URL. You can do either mtsu.edu/TPS, or if you want to go ahead and put the library, either way, it will get you to the same thing. So again, this is what you should see when you get to the website. We are going to be looking at a couple of the different sections here on the left. And I want to start with our Primary Source Sets tab. So on that, you will find, first off, our grade level resource guides. And we created these during the last standards revision. And what we wanted to do here was pull together as many of the primary sources referenced in your standards as possible. Here, I'm going to expand this a little bit so it's a little easier to see. Now, of course, this is going to cover the entire breadth of your curriculum for 8th grade. So from colonization all the way up to Reconstruction. There's a little bit of a course overview here at the beginning with the historical background section. The suggestions for teachers, again, thinking about how to use some of these complex text. And then what we have done is kind of break this up into the units in your standards. And you'll see that there are sources that are linked, there are images, there are maps, there are primary source sets. So again, just a wide variety of things. And I'm going to look again to that unit that we're focusing on for the summer, that New Nation period. And so again, you'll see you can click on any of these links. So if we were to click on this map, for example, you can see it will take us to where we can find that at the Library of Congress. Let's see. Unfortunately, my little black bar is in the way. Okay, so going back then to the primary source sets tab, you will see then there are links to the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Federalist Papers, etc. So again, there's a lot of things that are here. These are just kind of the main pieces that I wanted to, again, focus on for this section. So you have that resource. Again, that is the Primary Source Sets tab under the grade level resource guides. And then under the U.S. history, colonial America to Civil War, we have, these are focused on different topics. So a couple that I wanted to highlight for you that may be of interest. Of course, there's colonial America for the standard that you have about some of the early religions during that kind of Second Great Awakening period. There's one on the Quakers. There's Coming of the American Revolution. But the one that I really want us to look at is this one right here, Founding Documents. This one is pretty extensive, and it's kind of a mix of a links guide and a primary source set. So while some of the primary source sets really are just going to be featured, primary sources, this one also is going to include several other additional links. Now, this is several years old, and so there's going to be some new things that the library has put up that maybe are not included in this list, but it's a really good place to start. And because it's so lengthy, it's also organized thematically. So, for example, like here's a section on Patrick Henry, Thomas Paine, Abigail Adams, etc. And again, you can see like here's a lesson idea on Thomas Paine and Common Sense from February 2014, one of our newsletters. And then you can see again, you can click on any of these links. It will take you to where you can see that primary source set. You can click on the title, it'll take you to the bibliographic page. So again, this is going to be chock full of great resources for you. And as you're thinking about, how to bring in some of these primary sources into your classroom, you definitely want to think about, looking at what's available. So, if there are blog posts or their ideas, and if they're lesson plans, what sources are they using? You don't have to use a lesson plan, of course, exactly how it's written, but you can definitely pull pieces from it. America's Story, again, this is going to be great for our younger students, but if you have 8th grade students who are struggling readers, there might be some information here in the way it's presented that's going to be more advantageous for them. There are some essays, and again, so this may be kind of reading for your own background knowledge or things you could excerpt for students. Of course, you have the Artists Confederation section, everything from blog articles to newsletter lesson ideas to essays to things from the World Digital Library. So again, this is going to be a wonderful resource for you. I definitely recommend taking a thorough look at this sometime soon. All right, so again, that is primary source sets. And again, I would just kind of focus on grade level resource guides, the 8th grade one, and then U.S. history, colonial American Civil War. And again, you can see some of the others that we have, again, for topics that we're not focusing on right now, of course, War of 1812, Age of Jackson, Trail of Tears, Underground Railroad. There's a slew of Civil War ones. So again, a lot of different information. And again, lots of featured primary sources that will be helpful for you. And I mentioned to you guys, and of course, we looked at one of our sample lesson plans when we were together in March. What I want to do, though, is focus on just kind of reviewing with you guys what some of these are. So, of course, we have Preparing for Revolution. This was written by the same student who wrote the one we looked at in March, the Founding Documents one. So much like that one, it is got a lot of really great sources, but there are probably a few more primary sources than you would want to use with 8th grade students. So definitely, if you're looking at these, think about how you might adjust this to the number of sources that you feel will work best with your students. And that's something that I want us to think about in some of our future conversations. As we've already kind of started that conversation, but I think we need to continue that. There is this one on the Boston Massacre that was written by a teacher in Greene County, Chris Long. This one is really fun. So it's if I remember correctly, it's a multi-day. But it breaks it up and basically has students working in groups and they report on the massacre almost as if it is a news story. And so again, this can be a really fun way to kind of work through the event, but then also think about some of those socialist practice skills. So again, I really like this Boston Massacre lesson plan. We also have a couple of others that have been teacher created. One, or actually two of them by John Malik, who is recently retired from Kingsport City Schools. He did one on the Declaration of Independence, its legacy and ideas in today's world. And you can see that there are several great resources to go with this one. There is a supplemental PowerPoint. There is a graphic organizer that you can use. And then it has the Declaration broken up for chunked reading with students. So you definitely might want to take a look at this one. Goals of Government. This is one that I wrote several years ago, where we look at the preamble to the Constitution, try to pick out what are those core goals, and then look at some primary sources from different points in American history to look at how we are trying to fulfill those goals. So again, that's a one day that you can bring in. I did another one on slavery in the Constitution, and you can see that there are different packets here, one for middle school, for 8th grade here. So this is what that student packet looks like. Let's see, we will expand it here. So again, you can see, use these excerpts from activity 1. So of course, the instructions for that would be in the lesson plan itself. It has, this excerpt space for students to kind of work through, what this means, to take notes as they're trying to figure out, again, what these things mean. There are 2 excerpts here. The next page has got three other short ones. And then this question for them to think about, how did slavery influence the U.S. Constitution? So again, space to kind of work through their thoughts on that. There is a teacher packet that is here as well. So again, with each of these, then with the excerpt, there is an educator note, again, kind of what we'd want you to think about highlighting, or students to highlight, of course, as they are working through each of the different excerpts that is included. One of the others that John Malik wrote for us is on the Bill of Rights, and thinking about, of course, its impact on students today and on us more generally. So again, you have that one. And then one that my colleague, Dr. Stacey Graham, did, The Dangers of Factionalism with Federalist number 10. And so you can see that, again, there are excerpts to this. There is a worksheet that can be used. So again, these are full fleshed out lesson plans. Again, most of them somewhere in the 1 to no more than 3 day range. So definitely, we'll think about, if there is something from these that we want to work through as our next steps. But I wanted to just show you these and have you think about, again, what is available through this. Now, under our Tools for Educators page, there are a couple things here that I want to point out. First and foremost are our close reading exercises. We started creating these in the summer of 2020. And part of this was due to comments that we had gotten from teachers who, again, the challenge that I heard you guys talk about, how do we work through these very complex texts with our students? There's a lot of difficult information, difficult verbiage, a lot of context that they need to know. Like, how do we do it? And so we decided to really kind of pull out some different primary sources that we saw kind of featured in the standards, other sources that we just really liked and thought connected well to some of the content in the standards, and started working on creating these. So these are listed in chronological order. So, if we get to the US kind of timeline portion of this, you'll see that there are several that will meet 8th grade. So there is one for the poetry of Phyllis Wheatley, one for the letter from Abigail Adams about Remember the Ladies. But one that I wanted to look at here, because again, just thinking about the content that we're focusing on for the summer, being the Constitution, founding of a nation, we did do this one on the Constitution and the Electoral College. Because as we know, sometimes the language in the Constitution can be difficult for our students. So the way this one is structured, and some of these vary slightly depending on when they're written and the text and kind of what grade level they're targeted for. So you'll see here, you can access the full text here, this link, annotation, which I'll show you where you can find the Constitution fully annotated here shortly. There is a background, and you'll see that there are several things that are linked in here. So again, this is going to take you to sites where you can find more information from the library. There are additional resources. So for high school students, there are several things that are here for teachers. And then here are the excerpts from the Constitution that we feature. So there's a piece from Clause 2 and a piece from Clause 3. So we'll actually have the text of the Constitution over here on the left. And then over here on the right, you will see, again, us building out the context for this, helping students kind of explain what is going on. And you'll note that within the explanations for many of these, that there are, again, other links that students can go to find additional information. So again, this is meant to kind of, again, think through how this is structured and help them to better understand what they're reading when they're looking at the Constitution. Another one that may be of interest to you guys as 8th grade teachers is this one, A Wall of Separation Between Church and State. This is Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist, which is also where we get the whole idea of separation of church and state. It is actually from this document right here. So again, just like with the other, you can find the full text here. A draft letter with reconstruction of crossed out passages is available, a manuscript, and then one where digital restoration has been done. Again, background on the text or background on the document itself to give you kind of a better idea of the context for this. There is a link here that you can pull out from one of the exhibitions that you could use with students. Here is another link for teachers. And again, we get into, here is an excerpt from the letter. We'll see the text over here on the left, explanation on the right. And this one ends then with, here are some questions for further thought. So again, you could use this as kind of a launching off point for discussion. So these are just another way to, again, think about how we can approach using text, providing context for them, and presenting the information to students in a different format that, again, may be more helpful for them as they try to work through, again, these very complex texts that are expected of 8th grade students to read. So I wanted to show you all that page. Also within our themed guides in that tool section, of course, you guys should have already read the chapter from Jill Lepore's These Truths books. And I wanted to point out for that book, when we were doing the book club with this, we created a resource guide for the entire book. It's divided into 3 sections, so 3 separate documents. The one from the chapter that you guys read is the very first of the resource guides. And that chapter is going to be the last one for this section. So what you can find here with each of the chapters, we did a summary and teacher suggestions, possible discussion questions. Again, unless you're doing this with fellow teachers, the discussion questions are probably a bit much for your students. But what I did want to point out to you again is just a nice little collection of resources that you can find pieced together for this time period already. So here's one, again, some of the lesson plans and primary source sets, some things, of course, we've already talked about. But we also include here some additional links. And so you'll see here links, for example, Shays Rebellion, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, etc. Full text of the Federalist Papers. And then over here, additional links, we include links to several lesson plans developed by the Stanford History Education Group. So these are really excellent. One of our favorite kind of fun resources is Too Late to Apologize. It's a little music video where they kind of act out, the writing of the Declaration of Independence and sending it. It's a lot of fun. And then some things related to kind of George Washington, his death. So again, this is just the one for the chapter that we wrote, but if you're interested in kind of looking at this more broadly, you can see, again, at the first of every chapter is going to tell you the time period that chapter focused on from the book. And then you can see, of course, the link. So for example, this is the one for the Revolutionary period. You can find, again, links for revolutionary resources. So again, these are another great resource that you can take a look at. All right, the last thing that I wanted to focus on our website was our newsletters. And I'm pretty sure that I mentioned to you guys, of course, when we met in March, we do a monthly newsletter on different topics. And we've been doing this now since 2009. So many of you may already be on the newsletter list or have been on it for a while, so you kind of get these. What I wanted to take a moment to talk with you guys about in this session, though, was what are some of the lesson ideas that we've covered in the past that work really well, again, with the 8th grade curriculum. Because unfortunately, one of the challenges that we have with our website, because of the platform that it's on, is it doesn't have a great search feature, which is really one of things that I lament quite frequently. So I wanted to go through and just highlight for you guys a few issues that we've done in the past that have some really excellent lesson ideas that you can use as starting off points. So again, as we think about what are our next steps, these might be things that you want to go back and reference, pull from, and use for inspiration. So I'm going to start with some of our more recent ones, and we'll work our way back. We're only going to go probably back to about 2017. Now, as we review materials and update links over the years, newsletters, unfortunately, we just don't have the manpower to update. So some of the older issues, especially, you may run into problems where some of the links are broken just as the library has changed their website over the years. More recent things that shouldn't prop up as much, but if you find something that you want to use going forward and you find some broken links, let me know, and I'm happy to try to find the correct link for the the material that you're looking for. So here, just more recently, in April, we were looking at countercultures. One of the ideas that we came up with in that issue was antebellum utopias, looking at Neshoba and Freehill. So these, of course, will pop up in the 8th grade standards, both of these related, of course, to the abolitionist movement. But what you can find, there we go. You can see here, of course, it's about a half page as what most of these are going to be. And just kind of a little description. Again, because many people maybe aren't as familiar with this, there is a little bit more of a description and kind of context for these links, again, where you can find some of the resources for this. And then, here's an idea of, what students might do with it. And in this one, my colleague, again, Dr. Graham, wrote this one, and she included a link to a student packet. And so here she's actually pulled together some of the primary source text, excerpted it for students. And so you can see here, again, this is some of the text that you might use with your students in the course of this activity. She's, of course, pulled out some maps here. Here's a newspaper article about Freehill. So again, just a good resource to take a look at. So we have that one, again, that is April 2023. Going into 2022, our April issue, we looked at founding fathers. So this entire issue is actually going to be one that I think will be helpful for you. And I'm pretty sure that I referenced this one for you all when we met in March, because this is the one that has the lesson idea on James Madison that I think is particularly interesting when thinking about the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution. So here's that one there with just tons of great primary sources linked into this one. So definitely you might want to take a look at that one. Here again, separation of church and state, which was the inspiration for that close reading exercises, a lesson idea on Ben Franklin and the Albany Plan, and then George Washington's farewell address. And then you'll see here on the last page that there are 4 featured primary sources, including where the term founding fathers came up or develops from. Wasn't actually popularized and used until the early 1900s with Warren Harding, which I'm sure most of you, that's probably a surprise to you, as it was a surprise to me when we were writing this. So again, this whole issue has got material and resources that may be worth taking a look at. So that is 2022. And again, so that April issue. In 2021, there are actually 4 that I want to reference. So beginning in November, since that's how they're listed here on the page, we did landmark Supreme Court cases. One of the one we looked at was Marbury versus Madison. And of course, this is going to pop up in the 8th grade standards. This lesson idea, again, if you're wanting to focus on that particular event, will have some very helpful things for you. In October, we looked at the first industrial revolution. So that may have some things that you will find helpful. In June, of course, you guys have probably already looked at this one, as this one was one that was a core part of that webinar that you watched in April on how religion shaped America, and is where you can find the materials for social reform and the Second Great Awakening. Also, there is things here on religious dissent, looking at both Roger Williams as well as William Penn and the Quakers, and then a lesson idea on the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So definitely you might want to take a look at that one. Another one from 2021 that I think can be interesting for you guys is in our March issue on scientific advancements. There's a lesson idea on the forgotten history of the smallpox vaccine. So again, this one may be kind of just a little interesting tidbit that you could work in with your students. So those are the issues from 2021 that I wanted to highlight. In 2020, there is one that we did in November on the free press and the Fourth Estate. And one of those lesson ideas is on the free press in early America. So again, that one might be of interest to you guys, looking at some early newspapers and their role. And then in 2018, there are a couple here that I want to focus on. First, in December, of course, this whole issue is on the American Revolution. We get the Battle of Kings Mountain, Loyalist perspectives, George Washington, and then how to transcribe a manuscript. Of course, this is going to be a challenge that we will touch on later. In October, we were looking at diplomacy, and one of the lesson ideas on the Adams-Onis Treaty. So again, this is a little later than what we're looking at for the summer workshop, but this is going to be an interesting lesson idea, again, that might be of interest. And then in March of that year, we were looking at women's suffrage, and one of those lesson ideas looks at women's rights and America's founding ideals. And so this one is looking at how the Declaration of Sentiments and the Seneca Falls Convention really echoed things found in the Declaration of Independence. So again, when you get to that section in the 8th grade standards, this lesson idea right here may be very, very helpful for you guys. All right, and then the last year that I want to kind of look at for some ideas is 2017. And there are 3 issues in 2017 that I think may be of interest. So in April, we were looking at notable first. One of the ideas was on the Whiskey Rebellion. And so again, this is going to have some great sources linked in for how to teach the Whiskey Rebellion. And then in February, we were looking at civic education. So there is one on checks and balances. So again, thinking about how we might work in that, and then one on federalism, including looking at Federalist number 51. So again, that might be of interest to you. And then in our January issue on historical thinking, there is a lesson idea on revolutionary documents. Again, this is looking at the seal of main idea, and you can see here that there is a worksheet that is linked here as a complement to that. And so here is what that worksheet looks like, where again, we can see that there are excerpts from some documents such as Common Sense, the Declaration of Independence, and the American Crisis that you could use with students. So again, that is the newsletters. And I really, again, wanted to kind of highlight these because there are some great material, great links to different primary source sets, featured primary sources that you can find in those newsletters. But because of the limitations of our search function, sometimes they get overlooked. So definitely you might want to take a look at some of those and see if you can find things that would be helpful in that going forward for you. All right, so that is everything that I wanted to focus on our MTSU site. And we're going to look at just a couple of things on the library website before we close today. So again, going to loc.gov, that is how you get to the Library of Congress website. So we're going to first look at the teachers page, because I always tell folks, if you're not, have not used the site quite frequently, I would just start here. They have a lot of great things that are already pulled together for you, and it's going to help you so you don't like fall down rabbit holes and kind of get overwhelmed with the sheer amount of material that is available through this website. So if you click on classroom materials there across the top, you can actually just search this section. So we're just going to search Constitution. And you can see, again, it's going to pop up everything within the classroom materials that links to the Constitution. You can see that there are 19 results. Now, what I like about this is you can see over here on the left-hand side that you can kind of divide that up and see again where this pops up. So you might want to look at just specifically the era. So we want to look at that new nation time period. So let's see what we have there. We have 5. So again, very manageable number of things that we kind of flip through pretty quickly. So we have this, the Constitution, counter-revolution or national salvation. So this is a lesson plan. And again, even if you're not going to use it as it's written, you could always kind of flip through here, see what primary sources that they're using, how are they using them, are they using excerpts, what excerpts are they using? Again, definitely a way to make a use of that. Same thing with this one, drafting a more perfect union. There is one here on continuity and change in governing, one on the Bill of Rights, and then this one on George Washington. Now, one of the things that for some reason doesn't pop up on that, which I find kind of odd, is this primary source set. So if we went back to just where we got our first 19 items in the search results, there is a primary source that the Library of Congress has put together. And again, you can see here They've got featured primary sources where you can actually format them, where they're already formatted as PDF, so they're easy to just download and print off for your students, or send them to their Google Drives or however you're set up to share things with students. You have that. I will say, and I was a little disappointed when I was looking through this earlier just to review, that some of the handwritten things they don't have transcriptions for. So I don't know why that is, because definitely transcriptions would be helpful. There is also, of course, a teacher's guide, going to be great background information, suggestions for how you might use some things here, and then additional resources. And so we can see here we have that Constitution annotated, primary documents in American history, which this is also a pretty interesting and useful feature the Library of Congress has. Here are a couple of those lesson plans that we just looked at. So again, this primary source set, real good place to get started. It's going to give you something fairly manageable. So again, that is, just doing a general, a search through the classroom materials section. And like I said, you can look at that by era. You could break that down by grade level. And again, it's going to get you to some stuff pretty quickly that will probably be useful for you. I also wanted to point out just a couple of other things that you can find doing a general search on the Library of Congress. Again, focusing on the Constitution for our purposes right now. So I'm just going to search Constitution, and a couple of things that are going to pop up that, again, while they're interested in this, they're also going to kind of give us an example of things we can find when we do other types of searches that, again, will be very useful. So the first thing that pops up here on the list is this primary documents in American history. Now this page, this looks like the old ones, but what I like that they have done is they've actually went back in here and redirected these to their new library research guides, which again, I absolutely love these and find them very useful. So we can see they're divided by sections. So we want to look at this American Revolution and the new nation. And then we have listings of primary sources that are very important for this time period. So for example, we have the Constitution. And then we get to one of the new research guides. And again, I love these things. I find them so helpful and beneficial when I'm trying to find primary sources for things that we're doing in the newsletter or things we're doing in workshops. So introduction, again, just kind of a general overview, a couple of featured sources. And then over here on the left, you can click on digital collections. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, here we have this collection. So the first one, A Century of Lawmaking. This collection, unless you want to spend ridiculous amounts of time digging through it, you really want to find where they have went through and picked out specific things in these research guides, because this is all essentially it's the congressional record from the early first probably 100 years of the, again, the House of Representatives and the Senate. So you can see, again, they have linked to things here. So where we can go and find these things in that collection. Now this is going to be, again, it's all text. Some of it may be quite, complicated for students. Oh, and wait, they have moved this over to the new format. That's new since the last time that I have been. So, you definitely want to take a look at this. But again, just know that when you're looking at anything in that Century of Lawmaking collection, it's just the congressional record. Again, it can be very useful, but it's all text, so it may be a little more than you want to use with 8th grade students. There is this collection, which we'll look at here shortly, the documents from the Continental Congress and the Constitutional Convention. You'll see that there are the Alexander Hamilton papers, the George Washington papers, the Madison papers. So all of these paper collections, you'll see that they have highlighted things. Again, can be very, very helpful that they have pulled out specific documents to highlight. Now, the challenge with a lot of these is, have they actually transcribed the handwritten pieces? It is very hit and miss with the Library of Congress. And so let's see here, we'll just look at a couple of these and see if we can find an example. All right. So for example, right here, we have this one right here. This is some of Hamilton's speeches. We can click on an individual page in this. We can zoom in. We can see, again, this is all handwriting. His handwriting is actually pretty good. So, you could probably, take a stab at, reading through this yourself. It's not always the case. Some are better than others. If there are transcriptions available, depending on which collection you're in and how old the collection formatting is, you will either find an option here somewhere to download a PDF file, or there will be an option up here to view a PDF, or some of them actually have dual windows where you can see the original text on one side and the transcription on the other. So again, it really just depends on the age of the specific format for that collection, because they vary a little bit. So again, we have the paper collections. And again, I like that, finding them like here where they have highlighted things. Oh, another trick that you can do for this time period in finding transcriptions is if you find a document that, again, is well known for being very influential and important, sometimes you can take the title for it, Google search it. Sometimes the National Archives or university somewhere may have transcribed it, and so you can get to it like that. An example of that is that James Madison activity from one of that Founding Fathers newsletter that we did, because that is how I found transcriptions for those Madison letters. Was I found the original documents in the Library of Congress, I Googled the official title for it, and found on the National Archives where they had transcribed them. So you can do that. All right, one last thing that I want to show you here. Printed ephemera. So this is going to be, again, things that were printed, for example. So a little easier to read for our students. There are things in the rare book collection and of course the Jefferson papers. Then related online resources. Again, this is going to be other features from the Library of Congress, America's Library, again, designed for elementary and middle school students. The Constitution, analysis and interpretation, exhibits, other research guides that may be important, things from the teacher's page, and then lastly, Today in History and webcast. So like I said, these research guides can be great. Again, you're going to keep things fairly limited as far as what you're looking at. So again, you don't feel quite as overwhelmed when looking through things on the library's website. So like I said, you can find, if you're doing starting out with doing a search for Constitution, the first thing that's going to pop up is going to be this right here, where you can again find those and then research guides for all of these different primary source documents that are going to be important in your standards. All right, so the next thing, of course, this right here is going to be that primary source set that we looked at earlier. Then I mentioned to you guys, of course, that there is an annotated version of the Constitution. And so this is available through congress.gov. Wait, come back. And it is going to be, of course, the first thing they highlight here. So we can browse this and you can see, again, here we have the preamble. You can click on that. It breaks it up. And then it gives you a nice, again, explanation for this in more modern language. The reading may still be too much for your 8th grade students, but it may give you a sense of, again, how you might be able to develop things to break it down for your students so that they can better understand what they're looking at. So definitely that annotated Constitution, very, very helpful, a great resource when you're teaching founding documents. I especially love that as we get into, how some of the other, like the Federalist Papers relate, they actually reference those. So that can be helpful as well. All right, and then the last thing that I wanted to look at was this collection right here, documents from the Continental Congress and the Constitutional Convention. One thing that I wanted to point out about this is, in general with collections, when you get to a collection homepage, you're going to see that there is this kind of like about the collection, which is just a general kind of overview and explainer. The collection items themselves, so you can click on that tab. And it's going to show you that this collection example has 278 items in it. So this is where, again, you can get to all the items in the collection. The thing that I wanted to highlight, though, because I think can be very beneficial and we sometimes don't think about when we're looking for things in the Library of Congress, is that each collection will oftentimes have an articles and essay section. And again, these are kind of supplemental things that have been developed that can be very, very helpful. So this one has a timeline. And again, I think this timeline could be beneficial. You can see it's very detailed. So we have this one. You can click on the different years, gives you all the key events, a little blurb about that event. And then we can click over here on the left-hand side to move through the timeline. So again, this is really just an excellent tool that you can use. The other special feature that this one has is this to form a more perfect union. And again, this is going to be a lot of good kind of secondary contextual information, little short essays. And again, you can kind of click through these and see, they have some on organizing a war, fanning the flames of patriotism, relations with Native Americans. And then you can see there are some key people that are also highlighted here that you can look at that, again, are going to be important for some of the items in this collection. So whether it is this particular collection or others, definitely take a moment to look and see if there's an articles and essays section, as there can be some great resources. So with that, because I don't want to overwhelm you guys with a lot of additional information, I really just wanted to provide a sense of what's available, a sense of what you might want to review and look at prior to our workshop coming up here in the first week of June. And then as we think about, again, what are our next steps as we start to revise or maybe create new materials that we can use with our students to help to hopefully better teach these standards, what are some starting off points for you? So please take a little bit of time before we meet in June to review some of this, click through some of these, and then we will use that as a point of discussion going forward. If you have any questions about any of the content that I've covered in the course of this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at kira.duke@mtsu.edu, or you can, of course, post a message in the TPS Teachers Network in our group there. I look forward to seeing you guys in June, and hopefully this has been beneficial for you as we prepare for that. Have a great day.